Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's very nice to be here. I know it's late in the afternoon and people are winding down, and it's on a Friday afternoon, so it's nice that you all are here. I'll tell you, being a fiduciary, I can go on and on for war stories, as many of my fellow fiduciaries are here, but I'm going to go ahead. I know we've got only a short time and go through some of the issues about what a fiduciary is. So again, I'm sure many of you have heard fiduciary, but what really is a fiduciary? It's really a person who assumes a position of trust, and there's various positions that a fiduciary takes. As Nancy had pointed out earlier, there's a conservatorship, which is a conservatorship of a person, as she's indicated, and a person of an estate. We also, as fiduciaries, can be the personal representative. We're appointed by the probate courts to go ahead and handle and administer a court, an estate when somebody has died, or being a representative as an executor. We're also a representative payee. Sometimes we're dealing with Social Security of an individual or a pension of such. And as Nancy had also made indication of agents of power of attorney for health care or for finances. So those are just kind of some of the items that we end up doing as a fiduciary. The role of the fiduciary, I'll tell you, it's really stepping into the life of someone else. You know, someone had mentioned about family members that can step in and handle things. And you can very well imagine, if you are handling things for a friend or a family, what is it that you have to do? And if you're handling things for someone, then it is a matter of, again, stepping into someone's life. And as you can, again, go back into your own parents' lives or families' lives, there's so many aspects to it. But the fiduciary, as a licensed professional fiduciary, we actually have the bridge of between the client, the family, the healthcare providers, the caregivers, and the attorneys. We basically are the administrators of the individual, the client that we're handling. Fiduciaries are advocates, where they're responsible to advocate for our clients, to make sure that they have the quality of life. Because usually when we come in, we talk here about elder abuse, our role steps in because of some situation, because they're not able to handle things on their own. So they need a possible non-family member to come in. And as has been mentioned already, there are many situations when family is not necessarily the ideal person to step in. So you may use a corporate, or you may use the licensed professional fiduciary. And I'll just say the difference generally between a corporate and a private is generally a corporate is through a bank, and the private professional fiduciary is one that is doing 24/7. As a fiduciary, we do see the big picture. Because this is our profession, we can see situations that happen. Again, we're really talking about elder abuse here, but there can be many things that we're dealing with. It's not just the abuse, but it's medical issues that we're dealing with. We're dealing with repairs on a house. You can step into a situation where you're handling a client, and it's been brought up before, they're hoarders. What do you have to do to handle that? You have to get it organized. You have to bring people in. You have to make sure that you're finding all the personal items that you're dealing with the individual. So again, our aspects here as a fiduciary is to handle the financial aspect of it, the health aspect of it, to make sure, again, the quality of life decisions are there and that we are there to protect them. We also are there to make sure that public resources are available. A lot of us have a tremendous amount of people that we've been able to meet over the years. You will listen you've listened to various people that we've connected through within our profession already. So we reach out to the various resources to make sure that our clients, in fact, get any of the resources that they need to, again, provide a good quality of life. A list of fiduciary services. I've just put a few items of what it is that we do, and I'm not going to go through the whole list. But it's, like I said, again, it really is stepping into the life of someone else. So from the beginning, what is it that you have to do is find out what kind of funds are there to actually marshal the assets, bank accounts, financial statements, safe deposit boxes, There's brokerage accounts. You know, many of us have stepped in where there are bank accounts in 14 different banks, and there's CDs and 5 or 6 of them with each bank. So the goal is to try to consolidate them, because we find that sometimes our seniors do not want to just keep all the money in one place, so they have them in all these different places. So we need to make sure that we can find those bank statements, because they may not save them. We've had situations too, as a fiduciary, you step in and they throw everything away. You know, they don't want to save, to the extreme of the hoarder who saves everything. So it's really important that you try to get all of the assets, whatever it may be. Again, you want to make sure that whatever it is that you have, you're making sure that you keep it safe. We document, keep everything in order. One of the key things that a fiduciary does is to make sure that we have everything organized, to make sure that all the bills and all of the information relating to our client is at hand and we know where everything is. Making sure also that if there are investments, some fiduciaries may change a financial advisor that's been in place, and some may keep someone if they feel that they're happy with it. But you still have to do ongoing reviews with the investment advisor to make sure that the investments are wise. I took over a case not too long ago with quite a heavy estate, and it turned out, and this was a $3 million estate that an individual had predominantly in junk bonds. And it was amazing. I mean, I couldn't believe this was a bright individual, but for him, it worked. For me, as a licensed fiduciary, that was something I couldn't, so I had to get rid of 90% of those investments. So you need to make sure that what is it that they're invested in. Make sure that the goal of it is to protect not only the individual, but to protect the investments for the beneficiaries as well. Again, we do advocate for our clients, as been mentioned, whether it's an elder abuse or a financial abuse situation. We make sure that all of their medical issues are taken care of. And I've said it before, it really, again, is really stepping into the life of somebody. So every little aspect of their lives is what we do to try to help accommodate, to make sure that their quality of life is improved, because most of the reasons why we're stepping in place is because either they're not able to handle it for themselves, or family members aren't able to handle it themselves. And a lot of times family members, it's not that they don't want to, they may be out of state, they may have their own personal issues that they just feel it's way too much for us to step in, so we end up doing that as well. There will be situations where we have clients that have property. So it's not just that they have their home, but they have income property. So we need to monitor that as well, whether it's a property manager that's involved, whether it's a rental income. Many of us have stepped in where the rental income are dealing by clients who have been slumlords. And as sad as it is, people are willing to go ahead and accept living it that way, but us as fiduciaries, we need to step it up, make sure that the rental property is in fact safe, clean, and it has all of the items that it should be when you're charging somebody for rent. Make sure the rental income is coming in. We've stepped in, and I know I have, where a client has dementia, and guess what? The tenant forgot to pay the rent, supposedly. But when the client has dementia, then who's watching, in fact, if that rent is coming in? And the tenant will say, well, I paid him cash. Well, there is no, who can verify that in fact that was paid. So again, to making sure that all that is done. We provide accountings to make sure that people know, our clients know, or all those individuals that need to know, to make sure that they know all of the income that's been provided, all of the expenses. So there's a transparency of what it is that we do. And if it's, a lot of times we have clients that are at home, there'll be caregivers that maybe are in place already. It may or may not be through a qualified caregiving agency, so it would be important that we know, in fact, who is there to take care of the client. So we monitor that as well, and if they're not through a qualified agency, then we go ahead and take care of making some of the changes, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. We get involved in the purchasing foods and furniture if need to be, medical equipment, and also make sure that funeral arrangements are made. We want to make sure that we know exactly what their end of the life issues are going to be. I'm going to give you a couple of case studies just to give you some of what I've already stated and put it into actual real facts. I had a APS worker, as you've already know, had already spoken, Annabelle. And it wasn't her, but somebody had contacted me, and they had an elderly client who was living alone, didn't feel that bills were being paid. Neighbor has contacted them, was very concerned about the individual, felt that they weren't eating, felt they were malnourished, and they felt that they owned the home but wasn't too sure, and there was no friends, no family around, but some of the neighbors had felt that there was a concern for it. So the APS worker had contacted me and said, Stella, could you come in and step in and maybe take this individual to the bank and make sure that his bills are being paid for? We're concerned that the utilities are going to be shut off, and get some money so he can go ahead and get food to take care of himself. I can't step in, as what Nancy had mentioned earlier. You have to have documents in order to do that. I know there are, again, those elder abuse issues that people can easily take advantage of something like this. But for us as professionals, we step in because a document provides us powers and authority to go ahead and do that. So the first thing is, does this person have mental capacity? You know, that's the one thing that I might find out. And again, the reluctance to go ahead and take care of this individual. So what we ended up doing is trying to find out, is there any legal documents in place there? So with the APS worker, we went in, tried to search the house to see. Of course, we had the individual's permission to make sure, because we wanted to find out, does he have some durable power of attorney of health care, somebody that can step in? Is there a trust? Is there a will? Is there something at all? Couldn't find anything. So what I ended up advising the APS worker is that this person really does need to get some help. That we ended up, because of the legal documents that had to be put into place, and we felt there was a capacity issue, we ended up having the person have a well check. The police came in, they went ahead and said yes, and it turned out paramedics came in as well, and they said yes, this person is definitely malnourished, this person is dehydrated. They ended up taking him to the hospital, and it turned out that the public conservator went ahead and stepped in and helped this individual. And I found out later, you know, that they were able to find out all of the other documents in place that he had in a safe deposit box. So good that he did have something. Another situation is an 87-year-old woman who had some severe dementia. She was living at home. Her house, when you stepped in, clearly she had been hoarding. Very, very unsafe environment. I walked in, and she was in a hospital bed in her living room, and she had two male caregivers. One of them had been a former handyman, and the handyman, who was somewhere in his 50s, had hired a friend somewhere in his 40s to take care of this woman. And she was dressed in concert type t-shirts with sweats and tennis shoes, and her hair was, you know, disheveled. And here, this was a 3,500 square foot home, and her room was in the living room. So the issue why I was brought in was, as Nancy had brought up, about a conservatorship. The petition, there was a petition that had been brought forth. They had decided that she really did not have the capacity. She definitely did have someone that needed to step in and help. I was chosen to go ahead and handle this. But the issue that we had was not just the conservatorship, but we also had the caregivers. Again, there are some well-meaning people who feel that they're doing the right thing, and this handyman had known the family for 20 years, but he clearly did not have the skills to take care of this person. And to leave, you know, an 87-year-old woman in the living room, and that was her bedroom, and to be dressed and changed in front of everybody was just appalling. But we went ahead and were able to remove them, but because they had lived in the residence, we actually had to go through the right channels to get them evicted, because that actually was their residence. And that's another issue that happens. Sometimes people move in and they stay with an individual, and you can't just easily take them out. So the fact is that you do have to try to get them out as quickly as possible. So we ended up, again, doing that as well. We ended up getting proper caregivers for them, and we brought her home, fixed up her place, got professional organizers to take care of it, and she has some absolutely wonderful, skilled caregivers, and she's doing quite well now. The other individual is an 80-year-old Asian woman who was a really heavy smoker who had a son, adopted son, who was taking advantage of her. Now, she was out of state. She was in New Jersey, but she had family that was here. So they decided to go ahead and move her, again, file a petition for a conservatorship. But the problem with her is that she still felt allegiance to her son, and her son was always calling for money. So it was a matter of protecting her to make sure that in fact there was somebody overseeing her. So we handled and dealt with the excessive credit card debts that she had, that her son had accumulated, and was able to reduce that, reported that to the authorities as well, placed her in a proper facility, and fortunately, the facility was able to have her stop smoking, so she's doing a lot better there as well. Again, a fiduciary isn't for everybody, but the fact of the matter is, like what's been brought up, sometimes there are family members that just aren't able to. Again, it has nothing to do with they don't want to, but just their own personal time, they may not be able to go ahead and handle it. So I've placed some information here on things to look for when before you contact a fiduciary. The most important thing to see is if there's documents already in place. Sometimes people go ahead and have their trust or will in place. Sometimes they do not. Sometimes they do have the durable power of attorney, a health care in place, and somebody's been brought in. Signs of when to bring somebody in. Is there, again, the unpaid bills? Are there things that don't look good? And again, it doesn't matter if it's a family member. It could be a neighbor, or it can be somebody. And the importance of what I think this entire program is about is to have an open eyes and to see and to report it when it is. Us as fiduciaries, we end up getting cases because they have been reported. And thank God some of these ones that I've brought to your attention are because someone took the time to say, they need help, let's bring somebody that can help them so they're not taken advantage. But again, when you find some of these different things, unhealthy foods, I've walked in where there's food that has been there for the longest time, and people have dementia and don't even realize that the food is bad. And so if you are a friend or a neighbor or a friend of a friend, again, to make sure that you know that your seniors or the mentally ill are well taken care of. As been brought up about Nancy, about the conservatorship, I've taught this class a couple of times. This is offered and it's free. And it's required, once you are a conservator, you have to take this class if you are a non-licensed professional. But I've had many cases where the conservator who's been appointed said, I wish I would have known what I was getting myself into before I was appointed. So these classes are offered, the information is there, and it's helpful for you to at least know. So if this is of interest for you, that information is there. And like I said, it's a class that I think is well worth it, because I think many of us over time will be subject to some of this information, so it's a helpful information to have. The other thing is choosing a professional fiduciary. I'm not going to go through a lot of this because I know time is coming up here, but these are some of the helpful hints to just ask. I am part of an organization, California State, and so there is a website here for you to go into. And the one thing that I do want to just say just really quickly is our profession has been very, very active in licensing. We were very involved in getting the professional fiduciary license. This was back in 2006. And now the professional fiduciary does have to be licensed if there are 2 or more cases. So when you do have a fiduciary that's stepping in, make sure that they are licensed, and there's a website that you can go to and find out. And the other thing that we're also working on right now is AB 1339, and that is basically transparency. One of the issues with conservatorships is that the fiduciary does an accounting a year later. So the income and expenses are reported to the court and everybody that's involved, but it's a year later, and by the time it gets to court and by the time you actually see the document, it can be 16 to 18 months later. So what happens is there's sticker shock. They said, oh my gosh, I had no idea it was going to cost this much. So what we are proposing as our profession is that people know up front, what is it that we charge by the hour? What do we anticipate is the estimated cost to run a conservatorship for the first year? And as I've mentioned to you in just the 3 cases, it's very heavy the first year. The second year, things are more in control and it's a lot less in expense. But it doesn't provide, at least by this, what we're proposing, it provides the information up front of what potentially the expense will be, so that way people aren't surprised. And if they feel they don't want the professional fiduciary, they have an option to go ahead and make that decision at that point. And again, there's some information there that hopefully will be helpful to you as well. And that is it. So thank you very much.
Stella, great timing. One or two questions?
Yes.
If you guys when happens to be there, what would you recommend, fiduciary or conservator?
Well, a fiduciary is a conservator. So again, the fiduciary has different roles. So part of what we are as a fiduciary is one of our roles is a conservator. Yes?
On the case where the lady was sleeping in the living room, was that for you to accomplish all of those things that needed to be done so quickly? Was that a temporary?
Was that a temporary?
Yeah.
No, I still have that client. And again, I didn't go through the whole thing, but what we ended up doing is that she had a bedroom, but because she was a hoarder, it was filled with probably about 180 boxes of sewing equipment. And so we had to get it all out. And the caregivers that had been there for several years never bothered to clean anything up. They just lived that way.
So you were able to accomplish a lot quickly because it was necessary even before the conservatorship was...
Actually, I couldn't do anything until my conservatorship, until I was actually appointed. Yeah, exactly. Okay, thank you. Oh, yes.
Just the average fee you would expect to see?
You know, it ranges, and I don't want to kind of not skirt the issue, but I would say it ranges throughout the state. I would say anywhere between $100 to possibly up to $200 an hour, depending on level of expertise and experience. Okay, thank you very much.